In the 50s, it was called Duffy's finally, the hotel, wasn't it? And it burned in the 50s.
We had quite a time.
Yeah, and a man named Jimmy Merry, who I remember used to own, he ran a lot of the gay bars in the city for the syndicate.
He also had one in Sayville.
Yes, and he came over here, and this to me was really the beginning of gay Cherry Grove, because he brought bars over here. He brought the gay lifestyle over here, and was very successful. There were a lot of, at that time, gay life, the role models were more the writers of the time, Tennessee Williams, people like that, models, cabaret singers. A lot of singers would come over here to entertain, Corin McRae and Kay Ballard, and that was the Cherry Grove of the time. Probably more cultural than it is today, more culturally minded. And there were theme parties in the 50s and 60s, which we all hear about. Right. There was elaborate MGM-type productions that would take place here.
Well, who was it that owned where Nancy Haskell is now? That was called MGM, still called MGM.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They had a party one time, and they closed it all off. I forget how they did it, but you had to come in and give your name or whatever, your invitation. My husband was at the time one of their bartenders, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he got they gave him an honor, the best liked island employee.
It continued to become a party town, and in the 60s, even more so, and you told me that that spotlights were installed on the beach to stop people from sleeping and having sex on the beach.
Front of their houses, they would shine them out.
Mm-hmm. We had Jeep taxis at that time. That's how you would get from one community to the other. They weren't by reservation. I remember we would come and we would just hail down the Jeep taxi, and we would go to the Pines, or we would go down. I remember going down to Ocean Beach to the movies.
They started at first also going to church, Catholic church, and then movies.
Yes.
Yeah, my daughter Sally remembers going down to
there was
movies.
more interaction, I think, at that time between communities than there is today.
Right.
And those Jeep taxis finally were stopped. One of them drove over a drunk who had fallen asleep on the beach, and he was killed. And that's when the Jeep taxis ceased to be. It was a well-known writer. I don't remember. Frank O'Hara. Interesting. 70s, discos started up. Noisy discos, drugs, rough sex, attracting more people here. And you were telling me that they had found somebody strangled once.
Well, in the part of the hotel, that thing that looks like a boat, it was in there. Somebody had either hung himself or something. He was strangled with a bathrobe cord or something.
And you told me at the time, somebody or you had said, well, if that's what they're going to do, let them kill themselves. Right? 80s. AIDS. A lot of men started getting sick.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess they didn't realize what was happening.
Mm-hmm. Lot of fear.
Right.
A lot of fear, a lot of sadness. At the time, as men were dying off, women were coming into their own in the workplace. And a lot of lesbians were coming over here and buying up the houses.
That's true.
Which didn't sit well with a lot of the men here.
Men didn't like that.
I remember that period. There was a lot of resentment. A lot. Really, people used to write notes on the bulletin boards, complaining and why they have to come here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in time, it was accepted, I think. Don't you think it's evolved?
I think so.
It was very hot. It was very hot. It was a very hot potato at that time.
The
I
other
remember.
night at Cherry's, when I was there for chili last night, there were a lot of girls there. A lot of girls coming. There was even a couple who brought a baby in. I couldn't believe it because there was so much noise there, and I said, the baby will be deaf. I said they should put something over its ears. It was in a carriage.
Somewhere in the 80s, you suffered a double mastectomy.
Yes, I did. I was found that I had cancer, and so I went to the doctor, and they decided to do, and I must have been half in and half out, and he said, well, you should have the other one done. You want to come back next week? And I said, why? Do it now. So that's what they did.
Never had any chemotherapy, didn't want it.
No,
Never had any trauma about it, psychological problems.
no. I was supposed to be taking tamoxifen or something like that, and when I ran out of them, I didn't get any more.
You started being in Cherry Grove shows in the mid-'80s.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure when, but I did.
I remember,
Ted
I
Drack.
think I was in the first one you were in.
Right. You
Grove
walked up the
Fever.
boardwalk. Right. You
Ted
and-
Drack show.
Yes. He had asked Neil, who was working with me at the time, he said, do you think Jeanne would do something? And Neil said, I guess so. So he brought home a little song that I was supposed to sing. And I said that it didn't used to be, grass was what was growing on the dunes. And something like, there was a lot of verses to that.
Yeah,
I've forgotten now.
something about pot. Used to be what you cooked in, and
yeah, pot was what
grass
you
is
cooked
what
in,
you
and grass was
grow
what
on the
growing
dunes.
And then I said, I think this was the same show. I came in at the last part. I had a letter from for somebody. And I came in and I said, well, this letter's for someone. I don't read the letters, only the postcards.
You told me that you didn't think that the shows were fit for children, because you would come on stage in a red fright wig once and frighten 2 children in the second row. You didn't think it was...
I don't remember.
It was... How many grandchildren, great-grandchildren do you have now?
Well, I just had my 13th, I think, great-grandchild.
Which...
And she's beautiful. She's got blue eyes and long eyelashes.
Do you mind
She's
asking...
about 8 months old now. She was born in New Zealand.
Do you mind if I ask you your age?
No, I was just 88.
Okay. And I happen to know Jeanne spends her summers here, and in the winter she travels a lot. She goes on a train to see relatives and goes down to Florida.
Well, when Neil was alive, he went to Florida, and he said, when people leave their forwarding addresses with you in the post office, he said, anybody that puts Florida down, send the address to me, and I will try and get a hold of them, and we'll have a get-together if you come down. So that's what we did for 2 or 3 years.
You also go to some kind of church gathering.
Oh, Word
You
of
go
Life, I go
you go
to.
down on a train, right?
Yes, I like
in the winter.
Train. I like the train. Actually, the one that got me going there is the sister of Betty Weeks. She's still alive. She's 90, and she's over in Jersey. But we haven't been in the last couple years. No, we haven't.
In the 90s, more straight people started coming over here. Families,
so.
gays raising children,
Yes,
lesbians having children.
certainly.
What did you think about that?
Well, I thought it was kind of strange. I mean, I don't know whether 2 guys can bring up a little girl, but 2 of them have. Well, they first told me they had to have a mailbox, and I said, why? Well, because we're adopting this child, and we need an address or something. So I gave them, they never used it, they never had it, but then the next year they didn't seem to have it. It was just that year they were adopting this.
Again, it seems to be leveling off.
Yeah.
There was a lot of discomfort with all the different types of people coming here, but that seems to be
I've seen
straightening
this
out.
little girl now, and she's about this big, and she's cute, as big.
Yeah.
And he's a fireman.
You have seen a lot in your life. I mean, you go back to the Depression and the 20s, and movies and television, and do you have any thoughts about all that you've seen?
No, a lot of that I've forgotten, of course.
Hopes and dreams.
Right.
You have hopes and dreams. What are they?
Well, that I'll live longer and enjoy life, which I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess you can't ask for more than that. Anyone have any questions, quickly?
Jeanne, when did they first put the boardwalks in?
I'm not sure what year that was, but my dad had been, I had told Richard that we used to run out, if we were sitting on the front porch, we had a porch front and back, depending on which way the wind was, and we would have a table lifted up and we'd eat. And we would look, and sometimes wrecks had happened, and you'd see, what do they call them, hatches, washing up. My dad would have a rope, and we'd get down there, he'd get a hold of it, and my brother and I would jump on it and kind of ride down to where and then we'd drag it up, and that's what he would put down. He would start his own boardwalk. And it went from our house like that. That's what Richard said. When they put the boardwalks down, they had their own this way.
Mrs. Weeks here says that the first boardwalks were built in 1929.
29.
Because my first time in Cherry Road was 1957, and the boardwalk stopped at where Cloud 9, back where Cloud 9 is.
Right.
And then the Eberhardt, John and Joe Fury, started doing their building.
Right.
In the Eastern End, sometime in the early 60s, late 70s, as I recall.
They put in the Ivy Walk, yeah.
Anyone else?
Jeanne, sorry. What was the terrain like before the boardwalks were built? Was it grass and trees? How'd you get from house to house? What was it like?
Well, mostly sand and grass. Actually, between our house and down behind us, like where their houses are now, but my mom had houses on this side of the walk, and there was sand there. And one of the people that owned one of those houses was named Edwards, and Ruth, the daughter, had developed TB, and she would sit out in the sand, no bra on, getting sun. And then they finally sold it. My mom bought their house, and they went up to upstate New York.
I remember when I came out in the 50s, late 50s, the hurricane had taken all the trees in 38, and a lot of them were not grown back. And everything was flat. You could see to the last boardwalk. You'd say, oh, so-and-so's coming downtown, we'll wait for him. It was not like today. Everything was very flat.
When I first went around, I could recognize, when I was going around collecting for the gas and everything, I could see the houses. And now, sometimes when I go by, I can't even see the houses. Or they've changed them, added to it or something. But usually, the trees have grown up, so you can't even see what I used to be able to see. Yeah, everything's grown.
Anyone else?